This year, the first Sunday after Christmas falls on the 29th of December, when the Church commemorates the Martyrdom of Thomas Beckett, murdered in Canterbury Cathedral on this day in 1170. Yesterday, the Church calendar had us recall the massacre of the innocents, when King Herod, hearing about the birth of the Christ child and perceiving him to be a threat to his own kingdom, ordered the execution of all male children under the age of 2 in the region of Bethlehem. And a couple of days before that, on Boxing Day, we remembered, as we do each year, the stoning of St. Stephen, the first Christian martyr. Pausing to reflect on all this during what's meant to be a season of joy and goodwill, it feels like we're being plunged right back into the darkness of Advent, having only just emerged into the light of Christmas. Lest we be tempted to sit too comfortably with the nativity narratives, we have a harsh reminder of the brutality present in the world, even amidst the promise of hope and salvation. There are no easy answers to this terrible conundrum, only questions that continue to demand attention. So what do the cruel events we commemorate in the days after Christmas have in common with our world today, where violence continues to strike at the lives of the innocent and the faithful? Well, let me offer just 2 brief thoughts. First, then, just as now, it is often fear that lies at the heart of abuses of power which cause the suffering of others. Power can corrupt, and once corrupted, the powerful become fearful of losing their grip, and so become ever more controlling, coercive, and cruel. The baby born in a manger 2,000 years ago, whose message of peace and goodwill the angels declared, was perceived as such a threat by Herod. In 12th century England, King Henry II, fearful of the influence of Thomas Beckett, called for his removal. Today, in too many countries around the world, despotic regimes govern through violence, destroying anything they perceive as a threat to their survival. Power warped by fear makes for a dangerous cocktail, and we should each beware, for neither the Church nor any one of us individually is immune from its effects in our own lives. Secondly, Thomas Beckett and St. Stephen are a forceful reminder, if we need it, that suffering is part of faith. This was spelled out all too clearly in the life, teaching, and example of Jesus Christ, whose birth we celebrate in this Christmas season. There's no doubt that the reality of martyrdom in the early centuries shaped the emerging church, its developing theology and ecclesiology. But suffering is not just some ancient phenomenon which ended with Jesus or Stephen, or indeed the legalizing of Christianity under Constantine. Rather, in following the example of Christ, the Church should always expect to experience suffering if it is truly living out its calling, because the message of Christianity turns upside down the values of the world, and so can threaten and induce fear in the hearts of the powerful. It's no surprise then that martyrdom, which is as old as the stoning of St. Stephen, is also as contemporary as the beheading of Father Jacques Hamel, the French Roman Catholic priest killed in 2016 by Islamic extremists. For most of us, it's easy to forget, because we live in relative safety. But there's nothing wishy-washy about the Christian faith. The invitation to follow Christ demands a response from each of us. And that response, if lived out fully, clashes with the values of the world and can be costly. For some, it leads to martyrdom. So there's a personal dimension to these themes of suffering, power, and fear, which we should each attend to. But for me, there's also a communal element. I've already suggested that martyrdom didn't just impact individuals, but infused the developing character of the early church. So what would it mean for us today to go one step further and ponder the possibility of the Church's martyrdom in 21st century Britain. At a time when numbers of churchgoers are shrinking and we are conscious of our loss of power and influence in society, there are signs that we are succumbing to fear and lack of hope. Anxiety about survival is leading to louder and more persistent calls for church growth. At times it almost seems like we're consumed by fear, scrambling for future survival, which inhibits us from living well in the present, as those who are resurrection people, not called to be big and wealthy and powerful, but to be salt and light in our communities. People of hope who are fearless and for whom service to God and neighbour is an expression of perfect freedom. What might it mean for the Church to explore sacrifice or suffering as a calling? For the Church to die to itself, to risk losing its identity, which is the opposite of striving to survive, in order to allow God to bring forth new life in ways that we may not even be able to imagine. Tertullian famously said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the Church." Certainly in Iran, where I come from, the experience has been that against all odds, the tiny church continues to survive. That the blood of the martyrs there and the ongoing suffering of those who continue as living sacrifices keeps hope alive. God has not deserted Christians in Iran, though worldly evidence may suggest otherwise. And no more will God desert us in this country either. The idea of the Church being martyred might be shocking for some, although no more shocking, I suggest, than the idea of God's Son dying on a cross. As I've grappled with what it might be that the Church of England could learn from deep re-engagement with the themes of suffering, power and fear, I can't escape the fact that amidst the clumsiness and inadequacy of my words, there may just be some kernel of truth worth hanging on to. So this Christmas season, we give thanks for the coming of the Christ child once again, and today we remember with gratitude the life and death of Thomas Beckett, and with him so many others who've paid a high price for their faithfulness. And as we do so, let us look ahead with hope and expectation. Let us be those who speak out against injustice and suffering at the hands of the powerful, but who live without fear, knowing that love is stronger than hate, and the power of resurrection stronger than death. Let us be those who promote peace, model reconciliation, value the small and the vulnerable, and live as people of faith.